Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Ooh, a little bit hot off the top there. We are back with another week of RU ESports. We've got a very special week for you guys here today. Obviously, your host, Simo, and alongside me, as usual, we've got Joseph. How's it going, Joseph?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing swell. We've got a lot to cover this today, and we've got some special guests to help us with that journey. A little bit of background information on the two of them. We've got Chris Chan here with us today, CEO and founder of Esports Network. He brought us GGCon in 2015, and he's played a huge role in bringing one of the biggest events in Toronto history, really, with the next GGCon coming up. He's got a couple of Canadian esports groups with League of Legends and Hearthstone. He runs Well Played monthly with the help of EGE, of course, for the Smash side of things. And now we get into Shaun Byrne, of course, who's the co-founder and CEO of esports gaming events, specializing in managing events and the logistics of them, helps with a lot of fighting game tournaments. He's got like a whole crew of the EGE is just this just gigantic crew that helps everybody run their events properly. He's got his own gaming lounge down in Windsor, which is seeing a lot of success recently. I've heard about a lot of people going down there, playing some singles, playing some doubles, getting their asses beat. But that's another story for another day. He was featured along with a couple of other EGE members in articles about World Gaming and Cineplex and how that whole thing came to be and his kind of thoughts on that. And of course, he's been a part of GGCon and helping it find its way to the venue that's going to be coming up shortly. So let's give it up for these guys. Shaun and Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, it's nice to be here. It's actually the first time I've been involved with anything Ryerson related since I graduated, like a decade ago now.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, there's a lot of like good people coming out of Ryerson, like you and Wilson, doing a lot of esports stuff.
Yeah, even Rebecca's there too. So we didn't have an esports club back in the day. We just kind of played around. Installed like StarCraft on the PCs and stuff. But it's nice that like some clubs are coming out and now you guys have your own radio show. So I wish we had that back then, but esports wasn't nearly as developed back then.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's our responsibility as a part of like the media program to kind of like help push that over the edge and find other mediums to promote esports through Ryerson. We've got like a League of Legends team, a CS:GO team. So like, yeah, you're right. Like it's definitely starting to build up. Whereas like, who would have thought that we would be here today with like collegiate teams?
And especially in our media program, we want to push whatever the next big thing is, and esports is definitely that.
Mm-hmm. As this is a bit off topic, but has Ryerson ever considered maybe having esports as part of their like athletic program or anything like that?
Maybe one day.
But one of my professors, he's actually the athletic director, so like he pretty much oversees all of that, and I've kind of been talking to him just a little bit, so maybe I've kind of planted the seed for the future. So let's hope that kind of starts to rumble, because it just sucks that Ryerson's no good in esports, unfortunately.
Ooh.
I think there were some decent Smash players there, at least.
It's a great Smash scene and team here.
Yeah, no, for sure. But unfortunately, like Smash is not like a collegiate esport. It's
League of Legends is the big one, and we're not.
Actually, you're wrong there. There's they do a league called the Melee Games, and I think there was something like 200 or 300 schools that participated last season.
Damn.
And I'm pretty sure Ryerson had a team.
Oh, no way. There's also Heroes of the Storm, which is very collegiate friendly. And I think the best Canadian team is Western. They made it to quarterfinals or something like that. So that's pretty impressive considering the Heroes of the Storm collegiate season just started. And you can just like March Madness, you can like make a bracket for your Heroes of the Storm Final Four or whatever. But if you guys want the opportunity to talk a little bit about yourselves and where you guys come from, we'll start with Chris and then move on to Shaun. And just talk to us a little bit about how you guys got into esports and, just give us a little bit of background.
Oh, geez, where do I start? Okay, so I found, I reconnected with gaming at PAX East. This was a time in my life where I decided to leave my job and just take a year off and kind of like rediscover my passions and my hobbies. So I booked a ticket to PAX, was confronted by a huge passionate crowd of League of Legends players, which I had no idea what the game was about. But people kept coming up to me and asking me like who my favorite champion was and all this kind of random stuff. I had no idea because I never played the game or any game for a really long time. So as soon as I got home, I downloaded the game, played it nonstop since, I took a break for a while, discovered the LCS, and, started watching, cheering at the screen and everything. And I realized that there must be, more people than just myself home alone watching by themselves. So I put out a feeler on Reddit and Facebook and just asked people, hey, like, who wants to get together and watch the LCS? I went to sleep. The next morning, I got up. I had like 500 people that said they wanted to do it or wanted to get together. So I was like, holy shit, we have something here. So I went out to like the bars and theaters. And this is like a week before, too, the final. So I didn't have a lot of time, but found a theater, rented it out, sold tickets. Basically, it was just my PayPal, actually. I just said, send money to this PayPal, and I'll make sure you get into the theater. Yeah, so it was completely legit. And we sold out in like 15 minutes. So I've been doing that for a while now, I think 3 years.
Wow.
We've been growing for quite a while. Our biggest viewing events reach up to around 1,200 people.
Yeah.
We've expanded to Montreal since then, and we sell at those events. Ever since then, I brought out some pro players to join us because they never come up to the East Coast. Riot's also sent us Iron Stylists. So pros that we brought out was Scar, Medios,
Snoop,
Special, Snoop. I think that's about it for now.
More to come, of course.
Yeah, more to come. With GGCon, I developed a good relationship with some players. Actually became Scar's manager / content editor. So it was just something that kind of came out of, I guess when you dive into a certain industry, opportunities are going to come up. So after the event, he just kind of told me that he needed a lot of help managing his brand and sponsors because he streams like 8 hours a day or 9 hours a day. So I just said, hey, I'll do it for you. And we made an agreement, and I started working on that with him. And we're actually starting our own player agency that is, I think, launched. We're officially not launched, but we'll be launching it soon.
That's really helpful for a lot of the esports players who are now like starting to get verified on Twitter. So it's really important for them to manage their brand properly because I mean we see stuff like C9 Medios Ego. Obviously that's not Medios, but that's like like a parody account, and like stuff like that can kind of maybe tarnish some of these players if they make like the wrong social media choice, right?
Yeah, and it's just a lot of these kids are really naive when they get into the scene. They're 16 or 17, have no business experience, don't even know what a contract looks like. And sometimes they can be taken advantage of. There are a lot of really bad organizations out there. There are a lot of good ones too, but sometimes they kind of need that helping hand, and they have to think about their future, especially since careers of esports or players or gamers is very, very short. So if they want to retire comfortably or at least have some sort of plan for their career after being a pro player, they got to think about that right away. So it's something that Scar is really passionate about doing because he never had that help when he was a younger player, getting into the scene. So this is his way of kind of not really giving back, but at least just helping people out and helping people develop their content and sponsorships and looking through contracts and all that kind of stuff. Like way back when, like people used to sign away their soul. Actually, some people still do now. Especially in the challenger scene. So
we've seen that with Huma. We've seen that a lot with Huma recently, which is a esports challenge. European Challenger Series team who had like a lot of problems, and I think they won the best of 5 to make it into, or they won the first seed into the relegation tournament. So they're the ones that had the problem with the contract issues. But it seems to me that player agency is kind of like where esports is headed, of course, because a lot of these players are still kind of like in their infancy as far as, you know, managing their brands. And I mean, I know that some professional sports teams have like PR relations people, but now you guys are on the right foot for creating that for like esports players, right?
Yeah, so we're creating that for people. Yeah, teams have their own PR and stuff like that, but the players kind of need that too. Yeah, it's really exciting. And so the other side of things is GGCon, of course, which has kind of, I guess, evolved from viewing parties. We don't really want to rely on showing the finals on the big screen. We want to bring in the pro players. We want to actually run the tournaments. And that's when we've got, I got together with Shaun and with a whole bunch of other communities within Toronto, like the Smash community, the FGC guys, and we're just running one big event. So yeah, I guess I got all that stuff happening right now, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, I know, and I know that Joseph and I are 100% looking forward to GGCon coming up. I went to GGCon. I got to play around with Skara and Medios, and that was a whole lot of fun, I must say. Those guys are pretty good sports, and I think Pictionary was like one of my favorite things to play with the two. They're both pretty bad artists, but it's funny because they were like bantering against each other in the crowd. Anyways, interesting stuff. We do need to hear from Shaun as well. So Shaun, why don't you give us a little bit of a background about where EGE started? I know that it was kind of from very, very humble beginnings, so why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess, over the years I've told this story a few times, but I always kind of remember a few things along the way, extra every time. But basically it all started off with, small tournaments I held at my parents' house back when I was, first year university, when I was about, 19 years old. And we would basically bring people over with Xbox 360s and CRT TVs and whatever else we could get our hands on. And it started off with about, 5 or 6 people. And after a couple of these, every, month or two, we got to a point where there was about 25 guys coming over to play at my parents' place. And it was at that point where, they basically told me, find somewhere else. This is no longer going to work here anymore. So at that point, we kind of realized that we could start a club at the University of Windsor. That's where I was going to school at the time. And, through that club, we were able to book space on campus. And, the idea at first was just to book the space and use it for the same group of 25 people that we had already been playing with. But just by creating the group and putting the link on the website, we started getting a bunch of new faces showing up every couple weeks when we were hosting. And eventually that led into us, hosting some bigger events, actual LAN parties, as opposed to just these, 4-hour weeknight tournaments we were doing. So we hosted, our series was called LAN of the Dead, and that's when we hosted in Windsor. And, the first event, we took it from, we actually partnered up with the Computer Science Society, who had been getting 30 or 35 people out to their events, and we posted it on our social media stuff, and by the next day we had already sold out like close to 100 tickets.
Wow.
And they had to buy new equipment because they didn't have enough networking equipment to host all the different players. We had to go out and buy power bars and extension cords and all this stuff.
Crazy.
So, that's where it started with these small LAN parties, and now we're building one with GoodGame Con that's, we're set to have probably 2,000 people at the end when everything is said and done. That's going to be there at GoodGame Con. So, things started small, but they've definitely grown pretty quickly.
Doesn't sound like those 2,000 people will be able to fit in your parents' house.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe if we took my parents' whole yard and kind of shoved everybody in like sardines,
and
we might be able
people
to
on top of each other.
Well, it seems to me that you guys both started from a very, very humble place with just like one goal in mind. Like, how can I bring people together? It seems to me that a lot of people in the esports industry, as far as grassroots is concerned here in Canada, are all about how can we bring everybody together? How can we bring people to one place and we all enjoy the same game, whether it's watching it, whether it's competing, whether it's just for good old fun, for, for no Johns, or, for money matches, or whatever the case may be. It seems to me that is always the particular case. Now that we've got, kind of you guys both introduced to the audience, let's get into a little bit of, our discussion for today, because we're kind of interested about what you guys think about the industry, and we'll kind of start off. We have like a list of questions here, but we're not really going to get through all of them. Maybe not. But both of you, can answer in your own way. But we're interested because you guys are both organizers, right? And GGCon's coming up. You guys both have a foot in the door in esports as far as Canada is concerned, creating these massive events, bringing in players. It's crazy what you guys are doing, and it's obviously going to grow. Put Canada on the map for a lot of these players, because we're hosting these fantastic tournaments, and we'll have our own Evo at some point, whatever. We'll get there. But the first question is, where do you guys see esports in Canada in 5 years from now? Not esports as we're gonna have these fancy broadcasts, but just tournaments, events, broadcasts if you want to go that far, but just the whole picture, because you guys are pretty much the foundation at this point.
Oh man. I don't want to sound really pessimistic. I think the scene here is going to grow. Generally for Canada, we always kind of follow the scene elsewhere. So whatever happens in, for example, the States, we're always kind of a step behind. So I guess if you want to take a glimpse into the future of where we're headed right now, it's pretty much, the States have a lot of events, right? They're getting their first DreamHack. They have PAX. They have all these gaming/esports events, ESL 1 in San Jose. So I feel that if you want like a realistic look, it's going to be something like that probably in 3 to 5 years. I know definitely there's a lot of interest in Toronto and Montreal for these organizations. So hopefully more events will kind of pop up and more support will happen. But we'll see. It's just, for example, I have a lot of experience in the toy industry, and that's kind of the same way. Like we follow the path of the States, but we're a little bit behind. We're a little bit smaller. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that's the answer that you're looking for. I mean, I would love to say hey, we're going to be like the biggest city and the biggest country for esports. I hope that, what Shaun and I are working on will lead towards something like that in the future. Maybe not 3 to 5 years, but maybe a little bit further.
Mm-hmm. Shaun, what's your take on that?
I guess I'll take a little more positive spin on it than Chris's spin there, but I do see some things that are going on now. Basically, I tell people all the time that esports is kind of like the wild, wild west right now. Everybody's kind of, begging and borrowing and stealing for whatever they can get here and there. But on the basic level, there is some better organization that's starting to happen, and that's where I see us, in 3 to 5 years is taking all these small isolated communities and just getting organized to the point where, for example, we've got a small community in Windsor, another community in London, another one in Toronto, obviously. And right now, none of those are really connected in any way. Mm-hmm. So I think what we're going to see is just more organization to the point where London players are competing against Toronto players and vice versa. And, everybody's just kind of working towards building one community as opposed to these small isolated communities.
Yeah, and I came across something very interesting very recently. This is kind of like off the record here. I came across Saskatchewan kind of has their own League of Legends league, and they kind of play, and they get pretty decent viewers, 1,000 viewers, and it's pretty interesting. So it kind of touches on what you were talking about, how I think that we just not we as in me, you, Chris, Joseph, but kind of we as the the esports professionals of Canada need to connect. Obviously it starts with London and Windsor, but then it branches out to the west and picks up everybody along the way, because everyone's kind of scattered right now and everyone's doing their own thing. Everyone's seeing success, but you're right, it needs to be kind of connected somehow.
Yeah, and kind of what I'm seeing too, for a long time everybody's been really kind of, I put it as selfish, unfortunately. Different organizers and stuff wanting to just work on their own projects without involving anybody else. But we're starting to see that change to the point where instead organizers are starting to work together.
Mm-hmm.
GameCon is a perfect example of that. We've got basically the largest, esports, traditional esports with League of Legends and Hearthstone kind of event of GoodGame Con coming together with the largest fighting game tournament Toryukin and the largest Smash event get on my level, all coming together under one roof. So like that's kind of the direction we're heading, and I think there's still there's some communities that are still being left out, and some that are choosing to kind of isolate themselves. But long term, I see that changing to the point where we're all working towards a common goal.
So, what are your guys' thoughts on Rick Fox's comment today? His tweet about saying how how esports will be as big as the NHL in what was it?
It's
5 years?
Within 2 years.
2 years.
He's making a pretty bold claim that the NHL is gonna be taken over by esports.
I kind of think that's a little enthusiastic.
Okay. So first of all, you can't. It's not really fair to compare that, because it's like saying all of esports versus one sport.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all of Dota combined with all of League, combined with all of Hearthstone, et cetera, will be bigger than the NHL. Like, I think that's really unfair. If you want to make the comparison, it has to be sports versus esports, or this particular game versus the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, even though if you want to make that type of claim, I don't think it's true. It's still very far away from it. I can understand his enthusiasm, because he's the owner of a team. He's diving into esports. He's got his son's involved and everything, and a lot of investors these days just love throwing money into whatever is new and what they believe has a lot of potential. So I think he knows that claim is a bit ridiculous, but it's just something, like, I think one other guy said something the same thing, but with the NFL. Like, it will rival the Super Bowl or something like that one day, and it's just ridiculous. But I think they know that. It's just they're caught up in the hype.
Yeah,
absolutely fine. But there's no way that esports will be bigger than the NHL in 2 years. It'll be, esports will continue to grow and get a lot bigger, but it won't come like close. I don't think.
He also didn't. He didn't really clarify if he meant like viewers or like revenue, because especially revenue, just on ticket sales alone, the NHL makes millions of dollars each year, and the LCS only has like 200 seats. There's no way those would ever be comparable in 2 years. But viewership, I mean, LCS and the LCS like finals sure gets a lot of viewers. Maybe not as much as the Super Bowl, like some people would say, but more than maybe your average NHL game.
That's exactly the point I was just going to bring up. Was he talking about revenue or about viewers? Because I do think that the viewership will actually catch up to the NHL, but I don't think revenues will do that yet. Sponsors have been a little slow to adapt to esports, and I mean, I don't blame them in a way, because if I was in charge of an advertising budget and I had to either put it towards something that was tried, true, and proven, or put it towards something new in esports, I probably would stick to what was safe and just save my job. But I think it's going to take a while for them to catch up. So revenues, in turn, will also be slower to catch up. But I do think viewers will be matching the NHL by what was the timeline?
2 years.
2 years. I can see that with especially if it's esports as a whole.
Yeah,
that's the problem though. He didn't really clarify with his tweet what he meant. He just said esports will be as big as the NHL in 2 years. That's a really bold statement.
Like, I mean, if we could get all the data, I almost think esports might already be there if you take esports as a whole versus NHL for viewership.
Yeah, I was just about to give the viewers a little bit of insight on that. We've got a couple of numbers here, and the League of Legends viewership as of 2015, we had 36 million unique viewers during the finals. The highest, viewership at one given time was 14 million. The average viewership, maybe probably during some Brazilian games, was 4.2 million. And the average viewership of regular season games, so like NALCS and EULCS, there wasn't a number on that, but I did a poll and kind of like a little bit of information digging on a public group, and people were saying anywhere between 150,000 to 500,000 is probably like the rough estimate. Probably the big fun games like C9 versus TSM would be like 500,000, and whereas like the not so important games are probably seeing like 200,000 or 150,000. Now if we get into NHL, football, and baseball viewership, Hockey, the Eastern Conference saw average 1.6 million viewers. The Western Conference saw like close to like 3/4 of a mil, so not even reaching that million mark. The All-Star Game, which is probably one of the most important games for any sport, only saw 1.4 million viewers. Stanley Cup Final in 2015, 4.9 million viewers. So the viewership's already trumping NHL in many different ways. Obviously, football, 111 million viewers for the Super Bowl, and that's not even their biggest Super Bowl. That's like their top 5 of their most viewed Super Bowls. NFL Sunday usually brings in 15 to 20 million views, so it's going to be a while before we see that, grow into esports. And baseball, in the U.S., in the postseason last year, we saw 4.2 million in the U.S. and only 1.2 million in Canada.
See, but that's the key. For the World Championships, when they said the lowest was 3.7 million, that's worldwide. That's like North America, Europe, especially China and Korea. That's the entire world, whereas NHL is only in North America.
Yeah. What are your guys' thoughts on those numbers?
I guess that's basically kind of what I would have thought.
I mean,
I don't know.
There's so many ways you can break it up. It's like, well, yeah, the NHL is here. Obviously, the KHL is not as popular, but Europe has all their leagues, right? And then
soccer is crazy
I'm not sure about
big.
those league numbers. I know if you dig a little bit deeper, I'm pretty sure the 32 million or whatever, the 36 million they said, was like accumulation of like all the finals games or all like the playoff games. Or
No, it
like
was just the I think it was just the finals alone. Yeah, you're right. I think it's accumulation of just the final game, the grand final.
That's worldwide, not including Twitch. I mean, it's not just Twitch. Like that's like all those Chinese whatever streaming sites.
Actually, no. I think that LOL Esports gathered their data just strictly from Twitch, Azubu, and YouTube.
It can't. Oh, yeah, maybe when you add all of the other language streams. It wasn't just like the mainstream.
Yeah, but no, like if somebody was streaming like on a Chinese particular stream site, I don't think LOL Esports counted that. Maybe, no? I'm not sure.
I would imagine.
Well, because the problem with Chinese sites is they inflate their numbers a lot. They're not really reliable, unfortunately.
That's true.
But I'm sure they came up with whatever number. They did it as accurate as they could. I don't have the article in front of me right now, but like it's maybe close. But again, it depends on what you're trying to compare it to. If you just compare it to the NHL, then yeah, maybe it's close. But there are a lot of other hockey leagues and tournaments around the world, like the World Cup or the what's it called, World Cup of Hockey. They have the Olympics, all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah.
But if you're also looking at revenue too, I think that's the part where esports has to catch up on for sure. It's nice that we're filling like the Staples Center or selling out, some soccer stadiums in Europe. But if you look at the one example I always bring up when I'm talking to people is like the Leafs, for example, right? They're NHL is the number 4 sport, let's say, in NA. The Leafs are, the worst team.
Yeah, pretty much.
In the last decade.
Yep.
And they've sold out the ACC for that past decade. Like, was it 19,000 seats that go for an average of $150 a pop? And they have no problem selling that out for 41 games a season. Whereas, LL, they have their studio, which seats like 500-600 people.
Yeah.
I don't even think they sell that out, and they do sell at the Staples Center MSG, but that's like once a year. So when we start seeing people like coming out and paying for tickets, and coming out to these events like that, spending a lot more money, then I think like esports would have made it. I believe esports will get there. So even though I'm really pessimistic, I believe esports will beat every single sport eventually.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the next 5-10 years.
I agree with him.
I don't know. Yeah, because I feel that people are just more into the digital world these days. Like when I was younger, I played basketball, baseball, all that kind of stuff. But people still do that, but not as much.
Yeah.
People will just prefer to play video games, and whether it's PC or mobile, which Hearthstone has proven to be absolutely huge, it's going to take over, and might not even be our lifetimes. Might be, long after we're dead, but it is eventually going to take over.
That's an interesting position that sports you're saying sports will maybe die out and esports will
it won't die out. I think it'll always be there, but I think that esports will take that over one day. Especially with the VR now, right? All the Oculus Rift stuff, and everyone's super hyped with that. But that's the thing, right? Like, is that considered a sport or an esport? Actually, now, if you think about it, you're playing soccer in VR. Is it considered both? Is it a hybrid?
Interesting. I think
I don't
that's
know.
like a topic for like another day. That seems pretty deep.
Who would play soccer
Yeah.
in VR?
Yeah.
That sounds
Like-
so boring.
Yeah,
One
it's
thing
like
I
a
did
new
want to say
genre.
though, one thing I did want to say is that's a very interesting perspective that I've never thought about. I've never thought about having, you know, weekly games, kind of like how the NALCS has, but filling out a stadium. I've never thought about the fact that
That's a long way.
that's a long way,
Very
but
long
it's
way.
something that I've never considered because I thought that esports focuses a lot of their revenue from getting, you know, ads and sponsors, you know, and getting, you know, let's say Chevrolet wanted to sponsor CS:GO, right? And you get the Chevrolet logo all over the tournament, but the goal for Chevrolet is because the Twitch viewers is going to be like phenomenal, right? The Twitch viewership is going to be phenomenal, and Chevrolet wants those eyes, right? So I thought that esports made a lot of their money from the viewership on Twitch, but I never thought about filling out stadiums because I know that they do that for finals, but I never thought about regular season games.
Well, the reason that like sports sells stadiums is if you go on the street and ask somebody to name any hockey team, they usually will name one or more. If you go on the street and ask someone to name an esports game or team or anything, they're not going to know for sure. There's no way that in our lifetime, I don't think that an esports game will sell out a stadium every single match, like an
Yeah.
NHL game does. There's
Yeah.
no way that's going to happen for a very, very long time.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't say
So-
that long. I think it will happen a little bit quicker than maybe you guys are thinking. Basically, if you just think about it this way, right? Like most of the people buying tickets to those sports, you know, traditional sports games are, you know, probably 50 plus, right?
Mhm.
How old is the average esports fan right now?
18,
probably
19,
in their
20.
they're
20s,
probably
20s, yeah.
late teens, early 20s. Just not at a point yet where there's enough you know, cash flow in their, you know, their income isn't high enough to just afford to spend that much money yet. However, give it another 10, 15 years when they're, you know, starting to be further into their careers, making better salaries and that kind of thing. And I think they'll have more money to spend on going to events like that. You're also going to see a switch where right now everybody who's an esports fan is a player, right? But you know, you once you have a family and you have a career, you're gonna have less time to play the game, but you'll still want to probably follow it. You'll still maybe watch for 1 or 2 hours a day, something like that. And that's when you're gonna start to see viewership numbers increase, player numbers probably decrease. But you know, your revenues will also increase as people start to go out to these events and live performances rather than just watching over Twitch.
Now there is, you know, we've talked a lot about the revenue side of things, but there is something that I wanted to ask both of you guys and see what your take on that is. So recently in one of my classes we had Scott Moore come out who you know had a huge role in finalizing that NHL deal for Rogers and getting that, you know, it was like crazy. It was like $5 billion or something just for the NHL rights. And I asked him a question. I was like, hey, like what do you think about esports? Where does esports fit on Sportsnet? Where does esports fit on TSN? What are your thoughts? What do you see? What do you like? What do you don't like? And he pretty much responded with, you know, we've been approached by kind of Call of Duty to kind of like do like an esports thing, like a regular, you know, segment. But, you know, upon like further analysis, obviously that game does not fit our viewership style. It's a little bit bloody. It's a little bit like, you know, graphic. Like we don't think it fits our image. So like we kind of just said no and we weren't interested in it. So that story stems from, does esports need television? And if so, what do you think it'll take for kind of like TSN or esports to, you know, want to dip their foot into the pool?
Oh boy, Shaun, you want to take this one?
Honestly, I'll just take the stance that esports doesn't really need traditional TV, and
I agree.
you know, as somebody who grew up watching a lot of TV, my parents weren't happy about that, but I still did it. And you know, now I'm at a point where I maybe watch TV for an hour a week, like at most.
Yeah.
And that's just to pretty much have something on in the background while I eat my dinner or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't you know, sit down for a program, you know, like a weekly show or anything like that anymore. If I want to watch something, I watch it on Netflix or on demand or whatever. And I think that's more in line with the average esports viewer. And that's why I just don't think it's going to be necessary that esports really makes it onto mainstream TV, because I just don't see a future on that platform. I think a lot less people moving forward are going to be watching mainstream TV, and they're just going to be, solely relying on things like Netflix and YouTube and whatever else to bring them their content.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree. I do not watch any TV at all. Everything I could ever want is on Netflix or YouTube, especially when I want to watch esports. It's all on Twitch. Like, it's the perfect platform. It's on the internet. It's available. It's free.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason that maybe esports would need TV right now is just to get that exposure and get people, like, get them to know, like, what esports is all about, like how big it is, how cool it is. Maybe people who aren't internet users, maybe, but still like video games, or even that play League of Legends but don't ever go on Twitch. Maybe they see it on TV. They say, "Oh my god, like, I didn't realize it was this big. It's on television." Like, being on television is huge just in itself.
I think, kind of thinking about what TSN and Sportsnet have kind of, brainwashed me in my program, is kind of like this thought of like a premium. You're paying a premium for this service. They're providing you with this coverage of this game, and that's kind of like if you can't make it to the game, here you have this premium service. You're paying, X amount of dollars for this service on your television, and you're catching it, you're PVRing it, whatever the case may be. I think people who are in like the esports, as an esports spectator, we're so used to this viewership being free. And I think if, TSN or Sportsnet or even ESPN or like any sports network across the world, were to say, okay, we're interested, we'll put you on our TV network, but here's what you're going to pay, $20 a month for this, television show or television network, so you can watch all the esports you want. I don't think it's just going to fly that way.
No way.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they adapt to it, because they do have a lot of money. So, and they're not stupid either. So, for example, the Turner, those
E-League.
guys are E-League. They're opening that up. So they're going to adapt, and they have a lot of money and a lot of influence. So I agree with you. I don't think we're going to see cable packages. No one's going to pay for that.
Yeah.
But they're going to adapt in some way to get into the space. And actually, one other interesting thing about the whole COD thing and how Rogers wasn't, I guess, enthusiastic about the violence. For GoodGame Con, I actually spoke to the RCMP about maybe coming out and doing like an award ceremony thing.
Wow.
That was like a really cool thing to do. So they were excited about it, but unfortunately they said they couldn't, because they saw that CSGO was on our list of games.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they're like, they couldn't promote an event that had like terrorists planting bombs.
Wow.
Whoa.
That's
like
actually,
to win.
I was thinking about that. That seems like it's going to be a really big issue, like in the future. These violent games, like how are people going to, how can like a game with guns and terrorists be like a family show? We all know it's like, it's nothing serious, but
oh my god!
Like if a mom sees like a kid watching a terrorist like blow up a bomb site, like,
oh man,
how's that gonna fly?
Yeah,
But,
no.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, when you see like anyone like on the news or the media can exploit that to people who don't understand video games. Like RCMP supports event with terrorists planting bombs, and like what? Like I don't know.
Especially older generations too, who definitely do not get esports.
Yeah, so it's stuff like that can also get in the way.
Wow.
Of, progress.
Wow,
I honestly just see that as an excuse more than anything, though. I mean,
You're
you can think about any of the other TV shows going on right now. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Breaking Bad, but think about that.
Yeah,
somebody making crystal meth and selling that, and meanwhile that's on TV and one of the highest rated shows
and
there
like
is. So.
Dexter and like Walking Dead has a lot of just guns and just brutal things. I mean, obviously Walking Dead's not like anywhere close to being violent.
But people can excuse that because that's like a really good show, whatever, great actors, like whatever. I think they're just used to that now. Like they've accepted it. I mean, they're not going to let their kids watch it, but they can at least like understand how it's like, how valuable it is, how like it's maybe very interesting to watch. And I don't think people are going to understand that with like games like Counter-Strike.
I think just like anything, it'll take some time, but eventually if the viewership is there and if the money is there, then you're going to see that stuff be adopted by these TV stations. But I still take the stance that I just don't think esports really needs traditional TV. I think certain esports fans or people involved in the industry just want to see it there as sort of a way to validate what they're doing. But personally, I'm confident in my own abilities, so I don't really need to see it make its way there for me to be validated.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think games like League of Legends that maybe like are not as violent? Like there are violent aspects, but I mean, just looking at it, looks like a game with like magic and spells. Do you think those games will get like a bigger chance just because they're not like guns and explosions and stuff?
I think what you're going to need is something. I don't think any of the current esports maybe are the ones that are going to bring it there.
Really?
But what you're going to need is something that's accessible and something that a mainstream audience is going to understand to start. I'll give you a bad example because I don't think so. Sports games are really accessible, right?
Right.
Sports video games. I don't think sports video games are the ones that are going to do it, but at least to a mainstream audience, they're going to, if they watch, somebody playing NHL 16, they're going to understand what's going on. And I think, what we need is an esport that's accessible like that, but that's also has huge appeal to traditional esports fans.
Unfortunately, I think I might have to give you, the esport that's going to do it. And the reason why I'm not really a huge fan of this esport is because I kind of feel like people threw money at it and saw it grow. It's a successful esport. It's a lot of fun. People have a lot of fun playing it. And competitively, you can really see the skill differential if you play it casually and if, somebody plays it professionally. Rocket League. It has its own kind of like esports mentality, but it's also soccer with cars. So I think that it's definitely got that kind of grasp on what you're talking about.
And a mom would let her like 12-year-old kid play this game. Like she'd have no problems. There's no guns. There's no killing. There's no anything. It's very simple. It's
cars, soccer.
Hey, man,
right?
you could demolish the other cars in the game. You can actually.
Okay, whatever.
And you can drive really fast, so that might teach kids to speed and good speed.
Oh my god! And also teach kids to jump with their cars and do aerials and
Yeah, and to run,
to go up walls.
You're gonna see a lot of violent car crashes at soccer fields very shortly.
Oh my god!
Also, this brings back. This is completely random, but like there was a character in League of Legends who had a cigar, and League of Legends was like, you know what, we don't think this is appropriate, so they took off the cigar off the character.
Was that because they? But was that because they had an M rating or something, or they removed the like cigar and tobacco thing from their like whatever their rating?
Yeah.
Is that why they did it?
Yeah, I think so.
They didn't just do it for no reason. I'm pretty sure.
No,
People were pissed.
Yeah, people. That brought the whole theme of the character, but that's not what we're here to talk about. It was just like another example of like people are like afraid of dangerous things apparently. Do we have any more questions? Let's see what we got here. We're curious as to your thoughts on, we've talked about Canada and Canadian esports. Toronto is a hot spot for a lot of investors and sponsors, and they want to put their events there. What do you with GGCon, what do you think it will unlock for Toronto, and will it put it on the map?
I think it will, because this is, again, like when the pro players come here, like for example, when I brought up Snoop, the reason why I was able to get, Iron Stylus came out first, and the reason why we got Snoop was because Iron Stylus told him about us, and the reason why I was able to get other players is because word kind of spread about the events. So they knew, okay, Toronto's a cool place to visit. You'll be taken care of here. There are a lot of fans out here, and a lot of times when players come here, it's their first time to Toronto or even Canada. So I feel like maybe not like immediately, but it will have a effect in the near future where, obviously if the event goes well and if they have a fun time, then yeah, the word is going to spread about our events. And hopefully we do have a lot of viewers that will see that esports is growing here. So as to what it will unlock specifically, it's really hard to say, because as I mentioned before, when you jump into the industry, when you do a good job, random opportunities are just going to pop up. Random things are going to happen. Kind of like the whole, I met the pro player and we're starting like an agency type of thing. It's just completely random. So hopefully it does at least open people's eyes in Toronto or in Canada that this is a good place to, I guess, jump into and develop and grow and invest in as well. Yeah, I don't know anything specific, Shaun, unless you know something, or you feel like something else is going to grow. Obviously, like having the networks involved, like TSN just announced, I think, right? Like recently they're getting into esports, so we have the Score.
Yeah.
I don't think Sportsnet doesn't do anything, right?
Sportsnet doesn't have anything currently, but the score is owned by Rogers, so they're kind of affiliated regardless.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the deal is behind that, but yeah, so maybe they are involved. Maybe Sportsnet will do something. God, it'd be nice to have like MLSE or something to get involved, or like to start a team, because there's Rick Fox is in it. Shaq and Alex Rodriguez bought into it with energy.
Jimmy Rollins as well.
Yeah, Jimmy Rollins. So, but it seems like no one within the NHL or MLB. I guess Alex Rodriguez is MLB, but it'd be nice if like MLSC kind of buys into it as well. Like Cineplex is in it now. Geez, I don't even know who else is really big that can kind of get into it. But just more investment in general.
Well, one thing that's always really, really annoyed me is when, especially in League of Legends, they say like, "Oh my God, we're gonna have this great North American event. Like we love to be in North America, like North America." They keep nailing that down, and especially with this recent announcement that they're gonna have a North American tour. When I clicked that link, I was so pumped because they said North American. They didn't say America, tour across America. They said tour across North America. I was totally expecting to see something Toronto, something Montreal, Vancouver, whatever. And I was really disappointed when it was like, what is New York, LA again, and I don't even like Chicago. I'm pretty sure is the other one. There's two more, and a lot of people like
Chicago, San Diego.
Yeah, and in the Reddit thread especially, people were like, "Oh my, like no Canada, like that's totally not NA at all." Like I was really pissed, and I know people are really like angry. There's a lot of people in Toronto I know that would love to like go to an event, and there's a lot of places where they could host an event like that too.
I'm not sure what the issues they're having right now. They are hinting very heavily that an event will land here this year. My money would be on the semifinals, but who knows, right? I've been betting on this for for like 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah.
His entire career has depended on it. Has depended on Riot coming here.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, it could be All Stars too, right? Maybe.
Yeah,
that would be.
But
great.
I feel that All Stars would be. To me, it's not as an appealing event as semifinals.
I think what they said the major issues were visas, which you know what, if that's the actual problem, then I can like understand that, because it's not the U.S., it's Canada, it's a new country. Pretty much all the players that are like already in the LCS will have to get new visas, as far as I understand, because it's not the U.S., it's a completely different country. If that's the actual issue, then fine, I can live with that. But if it's just them like just kind of snubbing us, that's kind of a little silly. And considering there's so many players up here, it's part of like North America. It feels like we're really like ignored.
Yeah, I mean, visas, I can see it being a valid issue, but that's never really stopped them before. I mean, I've read the threads where it's like, oh, well, Europe has a bunch of countries, but they're in the EU. Mm-hmm. I do see an issue if someone is in a permanent residence and just has their work visa in the States, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for them to come here. Yeah. And it takes a really long. I was going to get Quas to come out for, I think, the Montreal World Finals, and he applied for a visa, and they told us the average wait time was like, I don't know, 100 days.
Yikes!
I was like, holy cow! And he just got his permanent residency or his green card or whatever in the States, and it still took that long.
Wow!
You kind of dodged a bullet with that, though. I think with Quas.
Yeah, it sucks. So I don't know what the situation is like with most teams right now, if like how many players are foreign, how many players are actually U.S. citizens. I imagine at least 1 or 2. So it could be an issue, but I don't know.
That's the major complaint. People are saying like, oh, it can't be Canada because of like visas. And again, if that's the issue, then fine. But if it's not, then I don't see what's stopping them. They said, I think one of the writers said in like a thread, like, don't worry, we haven't forgot about like you guys up in the north, which again, you said they hinted at coming up here. So I'm hopeful. Maybe the next NALCS finals, that would be like amazing. Doing some kind of tour,
maybe
like
by north
Toronto.
you meant like Buffalo or something.
Buffalo? If they do Buffalo over Toronto, I will be really
We
pissed.
didn't forget about you, New York. New York, we haven't forgotten about you. There's, it's interesting. One of the things that I've been kind of thinking about recently is kind of like this fantasy land with esports. Like, I was talking with one of my classmates earlier today, Keyshawn. Shout out to Keyshawn. We were talking about like there's gonna come a point where all these esports professionals live like in a gaming house, right? They all live together. They all, one big happy family. But like LeBron James has his own mansion, and he shows up to the team practice in his Mercedes Benz, and he comes out with his Dre Beats in his suit, and they all kind of like live individually, and they're not as family oriented. Do you think that like that's kind of like where esports is headed, or is the gaming house and kind of a little bit more of a collective view kind of still going to be, even if esports gets this intense popularity, is that still going to be on the table, on the dinner plate? Is that's what's to come? Where Bjergensen has his own mansion, he gets in his Corvette and drives over to the LCS studio where he competes weekly.
I think it's pretty clear that they're going to eventually have their own houses, because I don't think they're going to be wanting to raise
Never mind
kids.
houses. They need mansions.
I don't think they're going to want to be
stars.
raising kids in a team house or anything like that.
Oh my god.
Oh my, yeah. I haven't thought about that, but I mean, you also have to think about what's the retirement age for an esports professional?
It's like 20.
Like,
Well, I think I've read some studies saying that after the age of 24, your skills as a gamer start to decline drastically.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, there are some that are pushing the late 20s, like Fear, one of the Dota player, just won the international last summer. So I think he's 28 or 29.
Wow.
So he's at an age where he could potentially have a family at that point.
Well, with his winnings, I'm sure he can support quite the healthy family. He's sitting on quite a lot of money. Dota, I'm even personally surprised how much money they raised for their tournaments, right? Like that's pretty crazy to think that Dota, was sitting on what was the prize pool for like 10 million?
I think it was 11.
11? Yeah, that's
no,
insane.
Dota, it was like 18, wasn't it?
Oh my goodness.
I can't remember, but it was a lot.
But first place doesn't get like all that. That's the total. Like,
no, but that's still a lot of money. League hasn't even gotten to that point, but League has. Yeah, it's weird. Like I don't know who's got more popularity, Dota or League. Like it's always hard to.
You can't judge a game based on its prize pool.
I know.
No,
That's really
I'll tell you for sure that League of Legends has more viewers and more money overall, but Dota just. Dota is very top heavy. It's something like the top 100 players in Dota make enough money to support themselves. After that, you have to have a full-time job and then plus play Dota. Whereas in League, you might have, a couple hundred or players or something making money or making enough money to kind of sustain themselves.
Yeah, and that's kind of like through streaming or like whatever other brands that they're kind of like pushing through, whether it's like making money through YouTube or
but there's no way that like maybe the lowest like paid players on like the worst teams, even if they're on the worst teams, there's almost no way they could have another job while playing. They got to be practicing like 8 to 10 hours a day. They got to live in their team house for the most part. Like, and I guess they're still young, so it's okay for them to be doing this at this point. But yeah, like if he's like 28, you got to start making some like life decisions.
Yeah, the difference is in League you're getting a salary to be in the LCS or whatever. In Dota, there's no equivalent yet, so you're living off of just tournament winnings. There's no salary or anything like that. So you need to either perform really well, otherwise you're going to need to find another source of income.
One other thing that needs to be thought about is the fact that in regular sports, in traditional sports, we've got broadcasters, right? We've got teams, they play in a league, and broadcasters fight for the rights to broadcast these teams playing, right? And whereas in esports, the people who own the game also own the broadcast rights,
or run the tournament,
or also run the tournament, also have all the staff. It's what are you guys' thoughts on that? Like that seems pretty interesting. How there's this interesting divide, and I even now I think about like could ESPN just walk up to Riot and be like, okay, we're taking away all your rights and we want all the rights to broadcast League. Like that must seem pretty like a pretty interesting topic to discuss.
Well, I'm sure they would do it for the right amount of money.
A lot of money.
If
Probably.
ESPN offered them enough money, they'd do it.
Like in the NFL and NHL, like how big are their deals? It's like in the billions of dollars.
Billions, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, if they walked up to them and if they saw the value in the rights for league or whatever, and they offered them like even $100 million, they may sell it, right? I mean,
It
that's
depends.
just a lot of money.
Yeah.
Depends what game. I don't know about League of Legends. Like Riot, it sounds like it's like their baby. They wouldn't want to get rid of it that easily. Like if it's a like unreasonable, crazy amount of money, then yeah, maybe. But I don't think they're eager or even looking to get rid of the rights. It's their game. It's like their baby. They started it. They've kind of like grown this section of like the esports section.
Money,
Yeah.
Everybody
money
has
can trump
a price.
anything.
Yeah. Okay.
Money can trump it. Like they won't. It's easy to say that, but like for example, Yahoo is getting into the streaming business now, right? I heard their platform's pretty decent. People are starting to watch it there. Twitch is obviously still the main channel. You could watch Worlds and stuff on other, Azubu or whatever. But eventually, those guys are really going to start to fight. And I'm sure one day in the future, one of them is going to go to Riot or Valve or whoever and say, "Hey, man, I'm going to give you X amount of dollars if it's only on my platform."
Yeah.
And
Azubu does
I think that will happen.
Azubu does that, and it kind of sucks. And especially I know for sure in Counter-Strike, like if you ever want to watch some like off tournament or off like league that's kind of smaller but still has like big teams in it, some of these guys like sell their rights to the worst streaming sites. Like Azubu is like okay, that's acceptable, but there's some other ones that are just horrible. Like the sites are filled with ads. You got to like install like browser plugins just to watch, and it's ridiculous. Twitch is just by far like the superior streaming site of all of them. Right now,
well, it's just kind of the state of esports right now. Those people running those leagues probably desperately need that money, so they're taking the highest bid, regardless of how the quality of the service.
Yeah, and I'm sure like if that happened, Riot would work closely with them to make sure the production's okay.
Right.
In fact, Riot could still handle the production. It just has to be streamed on the ESPN platform or whatever.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to see. Like you said, Yahoo, kind of dipping their foot. The Scores in there. TSN has opened up their esports segment. Let me let you in on a little bit of an inside scoop. They only have one writer currently writing for all the esports. So soon TSN will start to kind of like expand that a little bit. ESPN is also kind of dipping their foot with the broadcast side of things. They're doing a lot of Heroes of the Storm stuff, and then with Dota, they're obviously trying to get into it a little bit. But I think for us to move forward in esports, it's also a responsibility from these media platforms to kind of get our name out there, right? And like it would be even interesting to see, coverage here in Canada. So like with WCS happened here with StarCraft, and with the Score right next door. It's important to link these together, so that our name kind of like explodes a little bit.
Yeah, you're right for sure. I mean, if you're pitching for sponsor, someone just attaching ESPN's name or the Score's name to something gives it a lot more value. Whereas if you're pitching to some old guys who don't know what the hell Twitch is, it becomes a lot difficult or more difficult. Sometimes it's just the brands behind you that really help sell the thing.
I feel like site like ESPN and even like CBC Sports, I don't know, it's going to take a while for them to really get fully on board. Like they have their articles and that's great, but one of my professors is like one of the head editors at CBC Sports, Karen Sebasta, and I asked her like, do you think you'll ever be doing like esports stuff? She flat out said like, esports is amazing, it's great, it's going to be huge, but she said, I don't get it, and I never will get it. I'm not even going to try to understand like how it works, or I'm not going to do any content. It's not my thing. It's going to be for the next generation.
Yeah, no.
So who knows how long that's going to be?
Yeah, and after constantly talking about esports with all these different people, talking to TSN, talking to the Score, talking to CBC, I've talked to being in the sport media program, you talk to a lot of people who are just neck deep in sports, and the kind of take on it is like it's up to the newer generation who are going to be in these broadcasting roles to kind of put that on the map. But like right now,
they all love esports. Every person you talk to says like, "Oh, esports is totally a sport," which is whatever. But like they all say, "Oh my god, it's going to be great. It's like it's really fun to watch." But then they're not going to be on it. They're not going to be doing content or promoting it. They just think it's really cool, but it's just not for them right now.
Yeah.
They're too far in their careers to take a risk like that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
they definitely don't know enough about it. They just maybe to them it seems like a gimmick that maybe is just not like their thing. Mm-hmm. It's for somebody else.
Wow, what a show we've had today, guys, and I want to thank you guys for coming out. We are nearing the end of our show with just about like a minute left. It's not really a huge deal, but I'd like to thank you guys for coming out. It was really a pleasure to have you to talk. It was really interesting discussion. I think like it really opened my mind about a couple of things that I kind of like thought, oh, for sure, esports, it's coming, but no, like it really opened up my mind to like kind of the pace that's going to be set for Canada and for America and for the rest of the world as far as esports is concerned. Before we do wrap up the show, if you guys want to, kind of plug anything, please, by all means, the floor is yours. And we'll start with Chris and then move on to Shaun.
So we're running GoodGame Con, Shaun and I, with other communities. It's Toronto's largest esports event. It's on the May 2-4 weekend. Just go and Google GoodGame Con. We have, I think, over $30,000 in cash prizing. We have Double F Beerson coming out, Kriparian, and another Hearthstone personality, which we'll announce soon, and some of the Smash Gods, everything esports. So definitely check that out. That's it for me.